In May of 1988 in Cabo Rojo, Puerto Rico, Amaury Rivera was going through some photos his aunt had developed, which he had taken on his Kodak Instamatic just a few nights earlier. But as he flipped through the photos, his heart suddenly sank as the memories of that morning came rushing in. Amaury had remembered that on his way home at 4:30 that morning, he had been taken from his car by strange beings. And when returned, he saw a giant floating disc in the sky, surrounded by military jets. In a daze, he reached for his camera and snapped these pictures. And the story, folks, gets weirder. This is the story of Amaury Rivera.
Hey, thanks for this toll-free line. Love the show. I'll try to make this as quick as possible. My family has a cattle ranch in a town called Alamo, Nevada. Measuring it, my grandparents' cattle ranch is exactly 36 miles due east of the runway from Area 51. One Christmas, we went up into the mountains and went sledding. On the way down, it had gotten dark, and you can see the peaks between Paralysis Valley, where Alamo is, and Area 51 is on the other side. We observed a very bright light coming up over these mountains. We came to a stop sign and stopped. I was about 10 years old. And this light, unbelievably bright, several, probably 60 miles away, in an instant went from above the mountaintops to directly above us. The light was so bright, it filled the entire cab of the vehicle. We couldn't see anything. It was there for seconds. And then right back over to the same spot it was at, 60 however many miles away, and then very, very slowly went down behind the peaks. Pretty interesting.
Collective effervescence. This refers to the intense energy, unity, and emotional uplift people feel when they come together in a group. You might have felt this feeling if you've ever been to a concert or went to the movie theaters recently, or even witnessed something amazing like the moon landing. It's this indescribable feeling that you get when you're surrounded by people who are all sharing something in common. And that feeling is definitely present during the It's Probably Nothing live show. Folks, we have officially booked a North American tour with 15 cities currently, and we'll be adding more cities as we move forward. The live show will be hosted by myself as well as a variety of co-hosts and a bunch of special guests, including audience members that tell some of the most amazing stories I've ever heard. There's plenty of fun to be had, and a whole good time awaits you, so check out the link below. You can go to itsprobablynothing.com to secure your tickets early. Check out the VIP package if you like. Those usually sell out pretty quickly, and I can't wait to see what type of shenanigans we're going to get up to, and I can't wait to meet all of you on the road. Ladies and gentlemen, welcome back to another episode of Debriefed. My name is Chris Ramsey. Today, we're going to be taking a look at Amaury Rivera's story and the photos that I've purchased at this auction here, which you can see of this fighter jet surrounding this flying saucer. Now, according to Amaury, these are multiple jets. These photos were just taken in different intervals, and the jets eventually just kind of separated and went in their own way. Very, very strange story. He also felt and heard this beep in his head as he was taking the photos. He felt compelled to. It was very, very strange. And this is a very credible case that involves future messages of global destruction warning, so much so that Amaury actually ended up becoming a doomsday prepper because of those messages. Now, I've tried to reach out to Amaury with no luck, but today we're going to be reading through his book. We're going to start at chapter 2, and this involves him being taken by these little beings. It also talks about the multiple projection images, these sort of holograms that he was shown by the alien beings and what they signify. But before we do that, folks, a quick word from our sponsors. As somebody who creates content on a weekly basis, my workflow has to be absolutely streamlined. I have no time to muck about going through thousands of potential AI renders, which is why I really enjoy using Higgsfield Cinema Studio. If you've noticed, we used a lot of that sort of AI in this video because I can't actually recreate alien abductions. Believe it or not, there's nowhere to get actual alien abduction B-roll, so you have to create it. Using Higgsfield Cinema Studio has been a game changer for me. The process is super easy. You render a photo based on the story that you're telling, and then you drop it into Cinema Studio, and you can choose the camera movement, you can choose if there's audio, you can choose the duration of the clips, and it will make this cinematic version of this story that you're trying to tell. And the best part about it is that you don't have to do this 1,000 times. Like, the accuracy and consistency is far greater than anything else I've used so far. So if you're a creator or you just want to mess around with some, AI creativity, go over to Higgsfield. I left the link below and let me know how you get on. And thank you to Higgsfield for sponsoring this video. And folks, don't forget to check out area52.shop for the latest drops. We always got new things going on over there. And if you want to find a way to support the show, you can do so by becoming a member, purchasing something on the website, or simply leave a like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell on these videos. And without any further ado, folks, I think we've paid the bills at this point. Man, it feels good to be back here in the office. Let's just get into it. First time shooting with these cameras, by the way. These are the new FX3 cameras. They're looking pretty good. I hope the sound and video quality is up to par. Always trying to improve what we're doing here at Area 52. So Chapter 1 begins by basically just talking about how he got to Puerto Rico. He also lives in New York City. He speaks English. There's, in fact, an interview with Amaury where he kind of goes into detail about his, not as much as the book, obviously, but about his experience.
On my way back home, I encountered two small beings, two small strange men, which I didn't think were men from outer space. And they took me somewhere where there were other people besides myself, other human people, like from Puerto Rico, I guess. From here, another human being showed up. He claimed to be from a distant planet. He was dressed in black. He had a dark skin. He had a long black hair up to the shoulders, and he spoke to us with the mouth, verbally, and no telepathic speaking.
And to me, seems credible. Why would you make this up only to be mocked and ridiculed, and then only to pack your stuff up and leave civilization to sort of become a doomsday prepper? That doesn't seem economically or financially feasible, or like some type of get-rich-quick scheme that I'd want to be a part of, I assure you. So interesting behavior, if not true. Now, these photos came to me by way of an auction, and they were originally in the hands of Colonel Wendell Stevens. Just very, very interesting photos indeed. Remind me a lot of the Calvine UFO sighting. Just incredible. All right, folks, Chapter 2, here we go. My cousin, who was always listening to her radio, had heard that the salsa orchestra called El Gran Combo was going to be playing at Casablanca. That was the bar that he worked at, by the way. She called me immediately and asked if I could do her a favor. Since she mentioned El Gran Combo, I thought that maybe she wanted me to get her tickets or something for the show. However, she only asked if I could take some pictures with her camera. I didn't have a choice, since she gently reminded me that she had gotten me that job. In truth, I said yes, hoping that she would forget about it, but unfortunately, she didn't. That night, I arrived at the club, my dear cousin's camera, one of those cheap Kodak 110s. To make matters worse, she had given me one of El Gran Combo's records so that every member would sign it. I remember well that night. Again, forgive the translation here. This was translated from English into, or from Spanish into English, so there might be some, mix-ups there, lost in translation type deal, so forgive that. I remember well that night, since the place had never been more packed. All the mothers were elegantly dressed and accompanied by their significant others, and there were floral arrangements everywhere. The tables were decorated with white sheets, candles, and small arrangements. The place smelled like flowers and perfume, which gave me allergies. There were only 4 of us waiting tables, and every customer wanted to be served at the same time. Unfortunately, some of the people there, including the mothers, transformed into monsters after a few drinks. Only a fellow waiter knows what it's like to walk through a room packed with people carrying a tray of full drinks. And as someone who's waited tables myself, I do understand the struggle, especially in a dimly lit area with inebriated patrons. Now, also to be noted, Amaury is not a writer, and he says this in actually the preface of the book or the foreword. And he's like, I'm not a writer. I'm just trying to convey the story for humanity's sake. And so keep that in mind as well. You know, he's not, I don't think he's written a book since this book or before. Panic can instill if when you get to your table, someone from another one pulls you by the arm carrying the drinks to tell you, "Waiter, another beer." To sum it up, that night was hell. Women who had way too much to drink insisted on dancing with me. They didn't want to hear about the rules of my workplace. They still wanted to dance even with me having a full arm of drinks. It was difficult to take pictures of the group. I managed to get some while they were playing, and others when they were on break. I must confess something that my cousin is not going to like. I left the record behind at the bar, but I told her that all of them had signed it, but someone then stole it. The truth is, I didn't have the courage to go up to them and ask that each would sign the record. She got mad because she thought I'd stolen the record, but she was happy when I brought her camera back. By closing time, I could barely stand on my feet. Also, I looked like I'd just gotten out of a sauna, clothes on and all. I called it a night after emptying the ashtrays and organizing my tables. Afterwards, I went to the bar to get my cigarettes and the camera, but I left the record. I knew that when I came back, it wasn't going to be gone. Now that I think about it, I actually didn't lie when I told my cousin her record was stolen. I headed to the parking lot where the partying continued. There were couples everywhere. It was 4 a.m. and these people were still at it. At the time, the women didn't look so elegant and the men were not behaving like gentlemen. I walked through the crowd to my car like a zombie. I only had one thing in mind: getting home. Finally, I got to my car, anxious to leave. Little by little, the other cars started to head out. I placed the camera in the glove compartment. I turned the engine on and I took off as usual. I took the main road, road number 2, until I reached the intersection that took me to La Bajura. I'm sorry if I'm mispronouncing that, by the way, but I don't want to say La Bajura, so there you go. Once I started heading down this sector, I noticed a dense fog on the road, very thick and white. It was nothing out of the ordinary. I'd gone through the same area around the same time, 4:30 in the morning. Now, something interesting to note is that the dense fog does come up quite a bit, and I'm reminded of the story of Sergeant First Class Jeremy Weeks when he was on his way to Colorado Springs with his family and also encountered a dense fog right before a UFO flew over the car, and there was some missing time, so keep that in mind. I was driving slowly, paying close attention to the road. My thoughts at the time were of possibly encountering an animal on the road and preventing an accident. Also, I thought of the pain in my feet and what I'd fixed myself to eat when I got home. All of a sudden, I heard a noise, as if someone or something were running close to my car and was trying to catch up and pull right next to me. Everything happened very fast. I heard the steps and thought it was some kind of animal. When out of the corner of my eye, I perceived a movement on my left-hand side. I turned my head, and what I saw was not a cow or a lamb. My mind didn't know what to think. Boy with a costume? But at this hour? A midget? No, it can't be. I thought to myself, its head, those eyes. No, even the mouth. Nothing was... Go away, I told myself. It was something like a bizarre little man running beside the car. In my panic, I intended to hit the gas, but I hit the brake instead, and the car came to an abrupt stop. I looked through the windshield, wanted to keep going far away from that place, far from that strange creature that was running beside my car without taking its strange eyes off me. I couldn't do this, however, because Now that being with the enormous head was right in front of the car on the right side, walking towards me from the fog. The right headlight of my car was now on him, making it look even more grotesque. Its pale skin was reminiscent of a clown makeup. He was wearing tight-fitting clothes, olive green in color. The clothing didn't shine or had any distinct features other than who or what was wearing it. Its arms were proportionate with its body, which was about 3.5 feet tall. I thought to myself, how could it ever reach that side of my car so quickly? In response, I heard another noise beside my door. There was the creature beside me again, but much closer. It was then I realized that there were actually two creatures, or people, or demons, or whatever. I felt them opening the door. I couldn't take it anymore. I found myself paralyzed. I don't know if it was fear, sheer terror, or something else, but I simply couldn't move. Again, everything happened very quickly, in a matter of seconds. I couldn't handle it anymore, and I fainted. I want the reader to know that at the time, never did it cross my mind that there was a possibility these could be extraterrestrial creatures. The subject never really attracted my attention. I thought they might be monsters or demons, but never beings from space. When I came to, I was still in my car, confused, and when I looked around, I thought I was in some sort of underground parking. I say this because that place was not outside. There were other cars there, another 10 or so. There were no doors or signs. It was subtly lit and light gray in color. I noticed the other cars were empty, and there was utter silence. I remember listening to my own agitated breathing and peeking out to find a way out, a door, or some sign that would point to an exit. The clearer and alert my mind became, the more desperate I got. I felt I was out of air, and my breathing became even more irregular. I started to feel very claustrophobic. I didn't hear any sound, nor did it arrive. There, right beside me, was that little man with the chilling eyes. I remember making an odd, frightened sound, but I didn't utter a word. I felt paralyzed. Its eyes were piercing, and when I saw him, I remembered what had transpired on the road. During those brief seconds, I forgot about not knowing where I was and how to get out of there. All of my being was fixed on that creature with the fetus head and almond-shaped cow eyes. It looked at me without any sort of emotion or facial expression. Seated at the wheel of my car, I felt hopeless, like a trapped little animal. I tried everything to deny this fact, but to no avail. All of a sudden, it started to raise its right arm until I could see his little hand. It became even more tense. My hands were at the wheel. I'm surprised I didn't yank it off. I couldn't move or take my hands off of it. Truth be told, I probably shouldn't say I really couldn't move because I never tried. I think that my dazed and traumatized mind didn't let me. My brain was incapable of commanding my body. The creature was reaching for my forehead. I felt repugnance, disgust. Imagine if someone would reach for your face with something you're terrified of, like a snake or a mouse or anything that would cause you panic. Its hand for me was all of those things wrapped up into one. This strange being, whom I still considered something diabolical, placed the palm of its hand on my forehead, and with the last spasm of repugnance, my mind went blank. When I woke, I found myself seated with other people in a squared room. My neck and hands were hurting. I felt my eyes swollen. Where was I? Where was my car? I couldn't really distinguish where the room's walls began or ended. The floor, walls, and ceiling were all light gray in color. Like the other place, I didn't see any lamps, light bulbs, entrances, exits, or windows, but I figured that logically, although none of this seemed logical, that there had to be doors and lights, even though I couldn't see them. Where did the light come from? I didn't know. If a person were to stand in the middle of this room alone, with no point of reference, you would think he'd be standing in a great void. With me there were 14 other people. Men and women, from the looks of it, Hispanic. We were seated in some sort of chairs or long benches. Couldn't really see these seats at a single glance. Only because I was seated on one of them could I tell they were there. How I got there was a mystery to me. The floor, walls, and ceiling were of the same color tone, which gave the appearance of total continuity, like a camouflage or optical illusion. Now, folks, this is something extremely common, as a matter of fact, is the room, the walls meeting the floor. I think everyone from Whitley to Travis Walton to so many other people, especially abductees, people who have been taken or who said to have been taken by extraterrestrials, they seem to say a few things. One, this emanating soft light. And we've spoken about this time and time again with whether it's Udo Wartena or, countless others that have been taken aboard. I'm even reminded of the Ilkley Moore encounter, having that feature, I believe, as well. And then the other feature, being the floor and the walls meeting in this perfect sort of roundness where you can't tell where one ends and the other begins, creating that sense of, it being a void. I was still a little dazed when I noticed that the creatures were right in front of us. And I saw them over the shoulders of the people in front of me. No one said a word. I could sense the terror in the air. I could barely move. I was only able to turn my head, and with great difficulty. I felt a cramp in my neck. I was seated in the left-hand side of the last row. Each row had 5 people, and there were 3 rows in total. To my right was a teenager. He was wearing shorts, was barefoot, and didn't have a shirt on. He looked a lot like my brother when he was a teenager. When I saw the fear in his face, I wanted to try and ease it, but I couldn't. The others were dressed in different ways, from party clothes to sleepwear. Meanwhile, there stood these 2 with the extraordinary heads completely still. Every once in a while, they would blink very slowly. All of our attention was directed towards them. I gotta say, I find this really interesting, these details of the other people. This reminds me as well as of Kelly Cahill's case as well. It was like a mass abduction. Multiple people were involved. And, she was also describing other people that she saw there. This kind of feels like the same thing. And that they're, some of them are in party clothes, some of them are in sleeping attire. Must be so off-putting. Coming from an undetermined place behind us, there approached another being who wore black clothing. He walked towards the creatures and stood between them. His skin color was that of someone who was tan. It had a copper-like tone. His hair was black and straight, and he wore it a little over his shoulder length. It was combed back. He was very handsome. His shirt, which didn't seem to have buttons or pockets, had long, slightly loose sleeves. His pants were slim-fitting at the waist, yet slightly loose in the legs, and a little tapered at the bottom. His shirt was tucked in, and he wore black boots. He was approximately 5'7" or 5'8". His body was slim but toned. After taking position, he addressed us in perfect Spanish with no accent in particular. "Welcome. My name is Amaron. I'm not here to hurt you. Relax, don't be frightened. I come from a planet that goes by the name of Ka, which is pronounced like your letter of the alphabet, K. I guess Ka in Spanish. And it is my home planet. I am as human as you are." All right. Well, I doubt that very much. No one with slick back hair and like this type of appearance just shows up between 2 grays and goes, "I'm human like you. We're of the same ilk, my friend." I would be terrified of this non-human. These were more or less his words. I want to stress that these were not his exact words. I only remember the idea of the message. Therefore, I thought I will stay true to what he told us. The order of the words or sentences I'll transcribe as best as my memory serves me. If at this very moment you'd stop reading, close your eyes, and try to remember word for word a conversation or a lecture that happened 4 years ago, you could not. I'm sure that also you would only be able to remember the idea and not every word. I also do my very best to faithfully transcribe his revelations, given that 4 years have passed since my initial experience. Okay, so we're getting a peek into this. So this is a 4-year-old sort of document here. And he does bring up a valid point. A lot of people, they'll give experiencers flack about not remembering certain details. And, one experiencer comes to mind, but Bob Lazar, the OG, people are like, how do you not remember this or that? Like, could you remember 30 years ago what your classroom looked like? Could you describe to me the color of the chairs in the room, what the clock looked like, what the windowsill color was? There's so many details that our mind doesn't feel the need to remember because it doesn't deem it important enough. And of course, in hindsight, you think all of that's important, but at the time, you really don't. So you have to commit things to memory. And I'm sure that something like this, especially the striking appearance of these creatures, burned itself into, his neural pathways. After stating his first words, he noticed that he didn't quite have our undivided attention. The truth was that we were disturbed by the presence of the little men with the bulging eyes. He then told us not to be afraid of the Oimoras. As he said this, he took one of them in his arms as if it was a small child. The creature wrapped his arms around his neck and his thin legs around his waist, as if carrying a chimpanzee. The man put his hand on the small being's chin, turned his grotesque head from side to side, while telling us that there was no reason to be afraid of them since they were not harmful. They're made by his people, genetically constructed, he told us. Whoa. I think this is the first time in many cases that I've read where we are being told by another being on board that the creatures are just genetically modified sort of helpers. Well, I assume. This is really interesting to me right now. And I also love the idea that you can just pick one up and it wraps itself around you like a little chimpanzee. That is my favorite depiction of a gray alien, and I will henceforth burn this image into my mind when thinking about grays. And if I ever come across a gray, rest assured, if I haven't soiled my pants, I will pick it up and caress it like a little chimpanzee. All right. The Amorei only blinked slowly, expressionless. Even after he told us this, they were still repugnant to me, in my opinion. At least now I had stopped thinking about demons, and I began to have a notion of what was happening, impossible as it seemed. They were from another world, another planet. They weren't demons after all. I actually thought that this Amaron looked too much like an earthling to be an extraterrestrial. On the other hand, I could see it for the little ones with the fetal heads. Them I could consider extraterrestrial, but what did I know? And you spoke to us again. We've brought you here to show you some projections. In my head, I'm imagining him just like stats, just a chart. Look, this is the current state of the economy. These are our projections for the third quarter. All right, enough goofing around. We've brought you here to show you some projections. The images you are about to see will seem real to you, but they're not. They are multi-dimensional projections. They will appear to have a mass, consistency, and palpable qualities. What you will see will be emotionally and spiritually strong. Keep in mind that what you'll be seeing is not really happening. We'll begin with the first one. Again, I'm strongly reminded of the Ilkley Moore incident where this anonymous police officer was taken, snapped a photo of this little creature, but also said that he was shown projections, not unlike many other experiencers before him. But he also said that he was told not to share those at that time, like they weren't ready to be shared. And I'd always wondered, in my mind, it can only be like doomsday is what what other projections are you going to show? Oh, that life's great. So we'll see. Gotta say, Amaury's a pretty good writer. I'm compelled. This is, to me anyways, I like this. He's not fluffing it up too much. He's given us exactly what he recalls. Chapter 3, projection number 1. This first projection was really extraordinary. We were very impressed with the sudden change in what we were seeing around us. All of a sudden, that room without dimensions vanished, and all around us a valley appeared. From a distance, you could see the mountain silhouettes, trees, grass, and the night sky. You could see how the wind moved the branches and the trees, but you couldn't feel the wind. The effect of this projection was incredible. What one's used to seeing in a movie theater doesn't come close. It was totally realistic. The projection was all around us, and it took us to that place without moving. We all remained in the same position. The 3 other beings were still in the same spot. Something that caught my attention was that the strange chairs we were sitting on also transformed into part of that projection we were witnessing. It was part of the grass that surrounded us. The strange human remained silent while his small companions were still at his side, motionless. My eyes adjusted to the darkness and I started seeing more clearly. That place looked like it was in the island. I couldn't see houses or lampposts. Another curious detail was that there wasn't any sound. If indeed these images had been taken in the island, you really couldn't hear the night sounds, like from the crickets or the cuckoos. I'm not sure what that is. The only sound I heard was my own breathing, and for the most part, it felt like I was out of breath and I was still paralyzed. For a moment, stupidly, I thought about getting up from my seat, or whatever it was, and running through the valley. But where exactly would I go? Running against a wall? If indeed it was walls that surrounded this place we were in. My absurd thoughts were interrupted by his serene voice. "Observe the sky," he said. This is like a 3D hologram. This is like virtual reality. Like school children guided by our teacher, we all looked up at the same time. It was so real. I even saw a shooting star. Silence, however, made me uncomfortable. I tried everything to control my panic. As we watched the splendor of the night sky, he told us not to be alarmed. At that moment, our seats started to move individually to get a better view. They made no sound. Now the teenager that was at my right side was behind me. Slowly, we turned counterclockwise until we were again facing the human. The movement itself wasn't rough, but slow and circular. As soon as we stopped turning, he informed us that we would be taking a trip. All of a sudden, it seemed like we were taking off. The ground looked further and further away, yet we could still feel it beneath our feet. I thought I would fall and lose consciousness. My body became even more tense and I felt it about to snap. I considered that maybe all this wasn't really happening, that it was just a horrible nightmare. We kept climbing and I had to close my eyes. I was still under the impression that I would fall. I then remembered what the human guide had told us about it only being a projection, and I opened my eyes. We now found ourselves over the trees. I couldn't resist, though. It seemed too real to just be a projection, so I closed my eyes again. With a great effort, I managed to put my hands beneath my legs. It was then that I realized I could move. My head was about to explode, and I felt nauseous. What I find interesting here, folks, is that this being 4 years after he was taken, so he was taken in 88, this would have been in 92, virtual reality wasn't really a thing. So describing virtual reality in 1992 and the feeling, we all know that if you've taken a roller coaster ride or an elevator ride or have played the plank game in VR, you're all too familiar with the feeling of rising and how the brain, although it knows you're stationary, still tricks your mind into believing that you are in motion, and that causes a sort of queasy, uneasy feeling, almost like that feeling you get when riding an elevator or driving over a small hill. You get this like butterfly sensation, and it can really knock you off kilter. You've seen videos of people falling over in VR. I just find it really compelling, actually, that this person is describing that And we're talking about perhaps 20 years before the technology even came out. What do you guys think about that? I think that's an interesting point to make. All of a sudden, we stopped climbing, and I opened my eyes. My face covered in sweat and tears, I looked to the man and his artificial beings. Surprisingly, they looked as if suspended in midair. Not floating, but more like standing firmly on an invisible platform. I suppose that from their perspective, we would have looked like we were suspended in air also, seated on invisible chairs. They had stopped us a little further up from the trees. One could see the ocean's reflection in the distance. The feeling of being that high had me terrorized. My body was trembling uncontrollably. The mountain silhouettes looked like hills. I didn't want to look yet. I also couldn't look away from what I was witnessing around me. "We are located over your world," he said. Again, we slowly started to climb. I kept telling myself this was only an illusion, a movie of sorts, and that I shouldn't be afraid. However, it was of no use. A smog and smoke engulfed us, and I realized that we were going through some clouds. We were leaving Earth behind, beneath our feet. I felt rage and anger towards those small creatures that had brought to this hell. The human again reminded us to keep in mind that what we were observing were only projected images. Personally, I still found it hard to believe. We kept climbing until we saw the Earth the size of a basketball. We stopped. It got to be the size of a golf ball. In those agony-filled moments, I realized that I hadn't paid any attention to the 14 other people. I could barely stand my own situation, though I assure you, no one spoke. I'm pretty sure I heard some sighing, crying, and vomiting, or trying to. I can only say I felt very insignificant when facing such grandeur. I thought about that night in Mama's house when the power went out, the night of the stars. Was there any connection? Although we were supposedly far away from Earth, the stars looked as far away from the planet's surface. Not knowing exactly how or when, the dizziness and nausea gave way to marvel and fascination. While observing the sky, there appeared a circle of light, like a halo. The human informed us that the star encircled in the halo was located around his home planet's neighborhood, but that the actual star, or sun, around which his planet revolved was much further away. He told us that this is where we were headed. Suddenly the stars seemed to move, but it was actually us that were moving. I had always thought that the stars were scattered between the moons and planets, but if this trip was genuine, it's not like that at all. We sped up. The speed came back the vertigo. The halo was gone and the stars turned into colored rays of light. We crossed the supposed space at tremendous speed. It felt as if being in a whirlwind of colors. Now it seemed we started to slow down. The colors turned to white rays that formed a sort of tunnel. Then again, we saw the stars. Among them was the enormous one that looked very close to us. Around you could see what seemed to be planets. Again, I could see the halo around that star. The human told us that this was Ka's sun, and that Ka was the mother planet of the solar system, and to all those who inhabited all the planets in that system. The first humans of that solar system were created and placed on Ka. When this part of humanity extended throughout the entire planet, and there was no more room left, they emigrated and formed colonies in the neighboring planets. When saturated, they repeated the process. In many of these planets, there weren't the necessary elements to sustain life, or that of their animals, but they were able to condition such planets to sustain all kinds of life. They created seas where there were none, and they transformed the atmospheres to make them suitable. In the same manner, have other humanities across the infinite cosmos done this, the human sentenced. But of course, with one exception. They have indeed expanded, created, and grown both physically and spiritually. But in your world, the one you call Earth, you've done nothing but destroy, contaminate, and spiritually decline. You've even contaminated your sidereal space, your supposed far horizons. All of Ka's suns are autosufficient. But its loving government comes from the mother planet. Now, we will go to Ka. We felt a tremendous movement that led us to one of those planets, the one closest to that bright star. You could see various clouds, and the more we approached it, the more it looked like Earth. We started descending towards Ka, or whatever that place was. Its topography was different from ours. What looked like firm land occupied a great deal of the planet's surface. Instead of big fragments of land, such as we know as continents, there was only one that's surrounded by an ocean. Maybe there were more, but at least we couldn't see them. We went down through the white shiny clouds. Its hills, the green, and its rock formations were pretty much identical to Earth. I did notice something different, but I couldn't quite put my finger on it. The most notable difference, and I was able to verify this later, was the abundance of flowers everywhere. All kinds of wild and garden flowers that had bright and attractive colors. The blue sky dotted with cotton stains, the flora's green accentuated with multiple flower colors, and the blue sea made this place the stuff of dreams. In spite of all this, the notion of height still destroyed any moment of fascination I had. It was a sunny day, with only a few scattered clouds. In the distance, I started to make out what looked like an Indian village. We stopped over a beautiful forest, just at a prudent distance from the village. I could see animals moving between trees, but I couldn't make out what kind of animals they were. I could also see people running and walking. The human, still in his original position with the little beings at his side, told us, "Welcome to my home planet, Ka. Now, meet my people." We all started to slide through the air, over the trees towards the village or town. As we drew closer, I started to realize that what had looked like tents were actually pyramid-shaped structures. They were made out of some type of semi-transparent, multicolored, polished glass. We were then told that these pyramids were the homes of this group of people. Some actually looked like inverted cones, others like funnels, but each made out of the same glass or even some sort of plastic. They were all brightly colored. Instead of roads, there were trails, and there were flowers everywhere. The houses were arranged in a circle, and in the center, a plaza in the form of a square surrounded by flowers. The entire ground looked like it was made out of grass carpet that was permanently and evenly cut. In the enormous plaza, there were trees and what looked like some sort of pool. The pool was also constructed in that same material that looked like glass, but light blue in color. It was so brilliant and colorful that it was almost unreal. The reds, turquoise blues, purples, and many other colors of their houses, along with the rest of the colors of that place, complemented this whole visual explosion. I'd never seen such beauty. In the pool, there were children and adults playing and bathing. Something I should mention, and maybe some of you will find it offensive, is that none of these people were wearing clothes. I don't know about you, but I'm not offended by that. Perhaps people with a little bit more of a modest disposition might be offended. I like this, by the way. You know, I'm completely absolved of disbelief at this point. I want to live here now. I want to go to Ka. Please take me. I would love to see this place. It looks amazing. Sounds amazing. Our seats moved again, and we were able to see everything around us. In the distance, you could see other pockets of people similar to this one and that connected with each other through some bigger trails. While we slowly turned, we descended, or at least we were under the impression we descended, to that plaza. The people surrounded us. All were naked and smiling at us. In the crowd, you could see mothers carrying their children in their arms. Everyone looked happy and in good health. The human told us that these were the Ka people. We saw people from every race, black, white, Asian, etc. They were all different heights and had different colored hairs. Our seats kept turning, so we were able to get a good look. I imagine that these people who were waving at us were informed beforehand of the use those recorded images would be given. I think that they were smiling and waving at someone holding a camera. However, now it just gave me the impression that they could actually see us. That is wild that that's where his mind goes. He's telling us about this experience, but he can't stop bringing himself back to the fact that this isn't real. Like, it's blowing his mind and it's very immersive, but he's also like, I wonder if they're just smiling at a camera. So interesting. It was all incredibly real. How could this just be a projection? They all looked so alive. The only thing out of the ordinary was the silence. Although I could see them laughing, talking amongst themselves, we couldn't hear anything. Some women decorated their hair with different colored flowers. I even saw a dog barking in utter silence. If it hadn't been for the way in which their homes were built and the immense pool, I could have mistaken them for some tribe of primitive Indians. Are these people extraterrestrial, I asked myself? A tribe comprised of all human races, but where were their lasers, their robots, and super high-tech cars? Where was their bright silver-colored clothing? And their houses? Where were their imperial cities? Indians? Where were the 7-foot-tall beings with the eyes and the forehead, or little green men with antennae on their heads? We kept closing in, and I could see various animals. The crowd gave way to those who were bringing out animals. A little boy showed us a lion, which he guided with the mane. We were shown hens, roosters, monkeys, and very beautiful birds. We were also able to see, to our astonishment, an animal already extinct on Earth, something akin to a dinosaur. Horses, cows, camels, and many others we were shown. We stopped, and the crowd parted. Supposedly had done the Red Sea. Before our very eyes, a gigantic pool appeared. Then something spectacular happened. From its center came a water surge, like a fountain. The people cheered when they got wet. The happiness on their faces made me smile slightly. When the water column receded, 4 dolphins jumped in the air. What was amazing about this is that on their backs rode 4 little black children as if they were on horseback. When the dolphins reached their maximum height, the children took to the air, doing a somersault and landing on the water at the same time as the dolphin. The people, who looked like they'd glitter from the sun's reflection on their hair, clapped and laughed. The dolphins escorted the children to the side of the pool. The water again surged, and the children came up to us, wet from head to toe, smiling and proud. They shook each other's hands and bowed as actors would do at the end of a play. And they ran off in different directions. The Red Sea came together, the surge stopped, and our chair slowly came to a halt in front of the human and his 2 creatures. His voice startled me after all that silence. I'm sorry. This, to me, is far more terrifying than 2 little alien beings, 2 little chimp-like grays. The notion of just people laughing and clapping with no sound, and dolphins coming out and children riding their back and doing somersaults and like taking a bow, I'd be concerned that I'd overdosed on DMT. This is an incredible sighting and absolutely 100% terrifying. This is my birthplace. We call this town No, which means in our tongue, traveler. I am known as a No. There are many of us No's that have been born here. As you might be able to tell, there aren't elderly people among us. It was true. There was no old people, only children and adults. He also informed us that his people didn't age or die. That life is continuous. They grow up to be about the equivalent of 25 of our years, and then they stop. They do suffer accidents, though, and bleed and feel pain, but their bodies are capable of regenerating very quickly. Their world is free from harmful bacteria, and if any traveler were to bring back from faraway places such bacteria, it would be exterminated before making contact with caused surroundings. While the other travelers, the No's, are visiting planet Earth or cryo, not sure what that is, they try to avoid contact with harmful bacteria and germs as much as possible. I suppose that's why they had to sort of flee or expand their colony to the other planets, because if you don't die, you're just procreating and making more, just increasing your population and have to, reach out to other planets. In this sense, the creatures that they create, the Amores, are very useful. If for any reason they come in contact with harmful components to their human bodies, they are genetically capable of fighting these without the need of vaccines or medicine. However, this doesn't mean they don't suffer the discomfort that comes with said bacteria and germs. According to him, their bodies are capable of creating all kinds of antibodies that attack and destroy instantly anything that threatens their physiological systems. Their bodies possess a gland, which we also have, that secretes a series of substances that makes them immune to sickness after being affected one initial time. He also told us that our own bodies didn't function correctly because of the lack of balance and equilibrium that for generations we have prolonged. Generation after generation, we have polluted our bodies with so many chemical substances that our bodies don't operate properly. Every time we take in more of these substances, either through food, medicine, or illegal drugs, we keep getting weaker, regardless of any alleged advance in our medical sciences. Well, that's really interesting. That is interesting. Especially the part about the Amores, or these little grays, being a front line in the defense of some type of virus or dangerous bacteria. This would make sense why you would have grays. Take the case of Travis Walton, for instance. He had these little creatures in these little spacesuits do things, and then when he got out of hand, they kind of just left. And then came in this human wearing a helmet, possibly, because of the bacteria or some type, just quarantining. Also might be a reason why they felt the need to fix Travis when he got hurt, because they were benevolent. They also didn't seem older than what he's describing, and they seemed perfectly in shape. So this is all kind of adding up in a strange, silly, and whimsical way. The people that were projected all around us continued smiling and talking amongst themselves. Terrifying. The children were happy and running everywhere. And the animals that were brought to us, both known and unknown, were now being taken away. We started to climb again. The people didn't look at us as we departed. They only scattered. Slowly, we glided through Ka's sky. In the distance, I saw, again, several circular formations, similar to the one we had just visited. Again, I saw many flowers, as well as rivers and beautiful lakes. You could also see the people enjoying these. None of them were aware of our presence. The landscape could really be described as paradise. The vegetation was abundant, and the colors of the flowers really stood out. Though my breathing had returned to normal, the fear of falling from that high up was still with me. The human and his companions still stood in the same place. I could still feel the ground beneath my feet, but it looked like we were flying. We all seemed to be moving at around 20 miles an hour. The landscape beneath our feet drew back like a big curtain. In the air, you could see different birds as well as what we'd consider prehistoric flying animals. Though everything I was seeing was beautiful, my heart still harbored terror and panic. It beat in such a way that I was sure if I looked, I'd see the beat through my white, sweaty shirt. Was all this real? At the time, I thought that maybe I'd suffered an accident on the road of La Bajura, on my way from work, and that maybe this was the other side. My mind slipped in and out from time to time, so I wasn't sure what was real and what was not. Though the human wearing the black clothes had told us about his home, I was terribly confused. In this state of confusion, with my heart beating out of my chest and my eyes open like a dead fish, I kept gliding through Ka's sky with the others. We stopped over a place that looked like a farm. The fields were tended by hundreds of Amores. They were harvesting something I couldn't make out, and our guide didn't tell us. The Amores looked like organized ants, each one carrying out their role under the Ka sun, which had the same characteristics as our own star on Earth, so far as I could tell. We couldn't feel its heat, though, since it was only a projection. We stood over that farm for only a short while, and I managed to see some Amores carrying some sort of boxes, and I thought maybe in them were carrying whatever it was they were harvesting. Took them inside a big building that looked like it was made of bricks. The color of the building was terracotta. I didn't see any vehicles around. They all walked on foot. From what I could tell, from the height of the distance that I was, they could have been harvesting potatoes or yams or something like that. I really couldn't be sure. We left the farm and continued our journey. On the horizon, we started to see what looked like a great city. When we got there, I saw there were no people around. There were lots of majestic buildings made out of a solid-looking material resembling concrete or cement. They didn't have any windows, though. I couldn't see any entrances. I figured there had to be somewhere. Some of the buildings were rectangular-shaped and others squared. In the middle of all these gray buildings, there was a great wonder, an enormous pyramid. It looked as if it was constructed out of the same material as the houses we'd just seen. It seemed as if it were made out of polished precious stones or shiny different colored ice. It turned into a purple, then a fiery red at the very top. The 7 wonders of the world couldn't compare to this monument. I watched in disbelief. My mind could barely take it. This great deserted city was indeed impressive. Flowers did not grow here, and what appeared to be roads between the buildings were devoid of any form of life. Suspended in the mid-air in front of the enormous pyramid, he spoke again. This is the government center from the mother planet of Ka, and for its descendants who inhabit the planets of this solar system in particular. According to our guide, this was where his father works as a helper in the affairs of the planets. Our guide's father is in charge of those operations that have to do with the observation of our planet Earth, or cryo, as they call it. He also told us the other square buildings were laboratories and that Amores were mass-produced in some of them. We didn't descend into this government center. We continued our journey, still seated until we reached a place where there was no more vegetation and what appeared to be a desert came up. In the distance, you could see something resembling an urban zone made up of houses with round metallic rooftops that reflected the sun. As we got closer, I realized that what I was only seeing was just an extension of the desert filled with hundreds of circular vehicles, what are commonly known as flying saucers. All except 3 of these were the same size. Amongst all the crafts I saw, a building of staggering proportions that looked like a granary. While we were apparently suspended over this warehouse or airport, one of the ships left the ground and got close to us. It was immense, even bigger than a 747 plane. We couldn't hear any sounds. It was very impressive. It was a circular shape, like 2 inverted plates on top of one another. In the center of its upper part, it had a dome that looked like it was made of glass, and below in the center, it had another dome identical to the one on top. It was a smoky gray-blue color. And when it got to the top of us, I noticed that beams came out of the dome in the center up to the craft's edge, which gave the impression of the sun and its rays. All of a sudden, the vehicle climbed very high, and it lit up, which really made it look like a real sun. It then descended and positioned itself below. Our chairs, again, started to turn. I really couldn't tell the bottom part of the object from its upper part since they looked identical. The ship again started to move, and our chair stopped right in front of the human and his 2 Amores. A door of sorts opened from the edge of the upper part of the vehicle, and from there a smaller one emerged. It was like a navy blue car with no wheels. This car ship had a glass top or something that looked like glass. It had many lights around it, and when it passed over our heads, I noticed it had lights in the bottom as well. Though the lights never actually turned on, they gave the impression they were lights. The auto UFO got closer, and I could see the driver was a little boy, and an Amore was with him. It was as if the driver could see us suspended in midair because he raised his arms as if to greet us. The blonde, blue-eyed boy started doing different maneuvers in the air. He was demonstrating his abilities. The smaller vehicle then went back inside the large craft, which descended to its original location. I saw everything so clearly. The sky, the different objects, how could they all be so real? I still didn't have an answer. What I was seeing all around me was like a dream. One of the 3 larger vehicles left the ground. This one looked like it was the size of a football field. Went over our heads up at one point where it looked a little smaller. This time, instead of another vehicle coming out of its interior, it divided itself into 4 parts, kind of like a cake or a pizza. Each portion had beneath it, in its center, a sort of dome, which looked like it was made out of the same material as the other ones we'd seen. They positioned themselves in a single line, and one by one, these triangles slowly flew over us. According to our human guide, these vehicles were solar-powered. Interesting to think that these wedges can make, one flying saucer. Especially, we hear a lot about triangles, but they're usually like equilateral. They're not like rounded at the edge, but it would be interesting to think that these triangular things are just part of one saucer. And if you look at the photos, I wonder which one that is. That last one there. It's just so wild. The sweat poured down my forehead and into my eyes. Every now and then, when I felt my circulation wasn't normal, it was as if thousands of needles were piercing through my skin. Sitting like that for such a long time was terrible. We then witnessed the 4 parts of this huge ship come together as one with great precision. It then descended and placed itself between the others. Smaller vehicles were blue-gray in color, like blue smoke, while the bigger ones were dark in color, like ash, almost black. From our position, suspended in the sky, I couldn't see if the crafts landed on their bellies or if they used wheels or something else to do so. Our seats started to turn again until we were right in front of that gigantic silo-like structure. It looked like it was made out of aluminum. The human extraterrestrial told us that all their vehicles were built and repaired there. We didn't see any personnel there, and we couldn't really see an entrance to that building. It was probably located on the side that we couldn't see. We then continued our flight and left that place in the desert behind. Though everything we were seeing was of great beauty, I again started to feel panic. Nothing could compare to the beauty of the trees, mountains, prairies, rivers, and most of all the flowers. All of the colors stood out and were alive. The reds were redder, the green of the trees and grass even greener, and the blue sky was indescribable. I felt at that point a lot of mixed emotions. On the one hand, I was mesmerized, and on the other hand, terrorized. A very particular combination of emotions, I'd say. I wanted to stay in that place of extraordinary beauty, yet I also wanted to go back home in a hurry. Through this projection, 15 human beings from Earth got to know the beautiful place where our kidnapper and 2 of his creatures with bulging eyes, large heads came from. But there was more to come. We got a valley surrounded by mountains. There was an abundance of waterfalls and all kinds of vegetation and flowers of electrifying colors. We stopped and our seats commenced turning as they had done before. We slowly observed the gorgeous landscape. As we turned, he spoke again. Observe this place well. This is how your Earth should look like. In the beginning, where you come from was indeed designed this way. Our seats continued to turn slowly, and his voice became, for a lack of other noises and sounds, the center of my attention. He continued. Among you, there are some of you who will contribute to the reestablishment of your world's original beauty. By now, I couldn't tell fact from fiction. The seat stopped turning and we ended up facing him. He started to talk to those who were in the first line. To these first 5, he called individually by their names and looked deeply into their eyes. He gave them some sort of task. Some were assigned to care for animals, others to the sea and its many species. Others were assigned to agriculture, the birds and other things I don't recall. When it was my turn, I remembered I couldn't look at him in the eye. I was terrified of his deep, penetrating look. Even though I didn't look at him, he still addressed me. Amaury, you will help the nature renewal of your world. You'll help the trees, the grass, and most importantly, the flowers live on after what's to come. I simply didn't understand. I knew nothing of flowers and trees, and other than that, they needed earth and water and sunlight. He then mentioned the name of the boy sitting on my right and proceeded to instruct him, as he did with the rest of us. "Have you understood what I've just told you?" he asked. Nobody said a word. If some of us shook our heads in response to what the strange subject dressed in black asked us, he said that in time we would understand. That now we were just like children. He then said, "Children are born without knowledge. However, step by step, they acquire knowledge and wisdom. This is how it will happen for you as well." I still didn't dare look at him. I feared meeting his intimidating eyes. I looked everywhere except in his direction. When he addressed the whole group, I could look at him. But when he fixed his eyes on me, I could not face him. Slowly, the landscape started to lose all its colors and started to vibrate visually. Everything then faded to darkness. When we could see again, or when the lights we could not see turned on, we found ourselves in that same room with the human who had identified himself as Amaury. Beside him stood his two monstrosities. He really doesn't like the sight of these beings. They've been nothing but like nice and cuddly, and he's just like, "These devilish little big-headed, gross-ass, grotesque little beings. Ew." Puh. In the first projection, there are many details I have omitted. I basically gave a general idea. The projections I'm about to narrate are short, but shocking. They contain chilling, horrifying scenes. These are the most important given to us by this being for our humanity. My sincere intention is not to alarm or traumatize anybody, but there's no other way of presenting them without doing so. In all truth, these images we saw are alarming not just for my country, but for the entire world. It's extremely hard for me to put into words the horror and suffering that those other 14 people and myself went through when we saw that horrendous panorama. The dates of the events I'm about to describe were not given to us. Yet with every day that goes by, I'm more convinced that we're not that far off. I now understand what others before me, who've had something to say and nobody listened, have gone through. It's up to you, the reader, to take action or wait till it's too late. Prepare yourselves and in a timely manner, enter the arc of life. Don't wait to feel the rain fall on your face. Out of a sense of duty, I give you the next projection. Folks, whoa. My time of recording was 1:11:11. Right there as I stopped. How crazy. Whoa. That is the first projection, of which there are 3, and we will definitely continue reading because I also want to know how these photos were snapped. I think he was also visited and raided for these photos, and they didn't end up finding them, obviously. There's a lot more to this story, and one of the most fascinating cases that I've read in recent history, due to not only the physical evidence, but what's being told to him, what's being shown to him, how he's describing it. I don't know what to make of this, to be quite frank. I would love to hear what you guys have to say about the story of Amaury Rivera so far. My conviction level, I think, remains low due to just simply anything higher than 50% is ontologically shocking. That being said, though, it is not 0, especially with the pictures. The pictures look really authentic. And 2 of the pictures, actually, you can tell are in the exact same position, like the trees. And the way that the planes are facing, those don't even look like the same planes, by the way, but the way they're facing tells me that the disc wasn't really moving. And if it was, it wasn't moving too much, but that the plane must have moved around it, which is also, I think, what was described to have happened in Calvine. So fascinating case. I did not think I'd enjoy this story as much as I do. I actually really like his writing. It gives you a sense of what he might have felt, that dread, but fascination at the same time. Yeah, let me know what you think below. Is this utter BS, or how do you take this, given that you have these photos? Or are you waiting to fluctuate that ever-changing percentage of conviction until this story ends, or at least until part 2? Let me know. Folks, thank you so much for joining me. Check out the membership if you want some extra episodes, or if you want weekly vlogs, or if you want access to the book club. Right now, they're reading Invisible College. I'm wearing an Invisible College shirt, which will be available soon as well. And they also got movie nights. We got a whole lot of action going on there for simply $5 a month. Check it out. Also, check out area52.shop if you want to support us directly. Get some majestic incense, get a hat, get some free stickers, postcards, and pencils with your orders. Check it out. We'll see you guys on the next video. This felt amazing. Peace and love.